So what I want to do now is I want to talk about an ultra-secret task force, one that was presented to the judge, and the judge said it's not classified, it's not of national security, but it's irrelevant to this, so you can't take the stand in your own defense using any of this. So that allows me to talk to you today without prosecution. Task Force 160 was formed following the debacle in the desert, the problems that we had in trying to rescue the hostages in Iran were compounded by the fact that the wrong aircraft were chosen by our Joint Chiefs of Staff. You have to understand that even in the military, when you get to the level of a Joint Chief, the Joint Chiefs, it's a very political position, and everyone's jockeying to have their own aircraft or their own personnel involved in something that they feel is a slam-dunk rescue effort. Unfortunately, because of politics, many young American soldiers lost their lives in the desert in Iran. When President Bush came into office, or when President Reagan came into office, it's hard to differentiate between the two in that administration. When President Reagan came into office, he decided he didn't want anything like this to happen to him. He knew that the anti-terrorist threat was there and that something would have to be done. So it was decided that they would prepare a task force of aviation assets. These aviation assets were trained and based out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Nicknamed the Night Stalkers because our primary function was to fly night vision goggle flight. Night vision goggles or night vision equipment that are hooked to the aviation flight helmets. And we fly in the cover of darkness. The goggles are great except they have no depth perception, and the stress factor flying under goggles is 4 to 5 times that of normal flight, even normal night flight. We would routinely fly cross-country across the United States. We had the availability in later years of air-to-air refueling. We had the availability of bladders, tactical bladders on board to extend our flight day and our flight range. So we would routinely fly cross-country. Some of the bases that we stopped at, because we were a very top-secret organization as Task Force 160 at the time, and Task Force 160, you know, today is the black helicopters flying around the country. Because of the missions that we flew, it was difficult for us to land in the normal military environment. There are bases set up across the United States with minimum skeleton crews to support were able to support us for what we call RONs, rest overnights, as we ended our crew day. These bases are high security bases. One of them in particular in the desert in Nevada that I noticed was set up to handle over 2,000 people. It was a high security imprisonment containment area. I know that flying from base to base in the United States, many of the Army bases have received orders to set up containment areas for some type of prisoners, for some type of activity. What that is, I don't know, but I can tell you that they're being built and they exist. And they're being built under existing Department of Defense monies.
I have a copy of a letter here that ordered the Army, and I'll give some of you, their leaders, a copy, and you can make copies. I've passed out tens of thousands of these across America. But the heading is, and the seal up there and all, is the Department of the Army, Headquarters, United States Army, Training and Doctrine Command. Now, I'm not supposed to have this letter, but it's not illegal for me to have it because it's not classified. I've added 5 lines at the bottom about the concentration camps because that's what it really is. There were about 43 of these detention centers, as they were called. And you know, some 6 months ago, they started stocking food in warehouses for the people they were going to put in them. But in the last few months, they've increased to over 130. And many of them are on military active installations and on what was former some of the 96 closed military installations that were supposed to be returned to the citizens as real estate and so forth. Now, they've already stockpiled food for the people they're going to put in there, and then this letter says, the subject of it, and the date of it's July 1994, and they're supposed to come up with the guidance on how to set up these camps not later than 2 months later, the 29th of August, 1994. So we have to hold the Commander-in-Chief, who's now in office, responsible for this, because no 4-star general at that headquarters would issue a letter like this unless he'd been ordered to. Do you understand that? he'd be, you know, subject court-martial.
The high security bases are closed bases. Some bases aren't. Some bases have highways that you can drive right through. However, when you look at this area, you'll just think, hey, look at the barbed wire around that place. I wonder what's in there. Well, not much is in there right now, but something will be in there. And it will be people. It won't be equipment. They're not designed to hold a lot of equipment. They're designed to hold a lot of people. They're not warehouse areas. The primary mission of Task Force 160 was to support the anti-terrorism units such as Delta Force, the FBI Special Operation Group. We would provide aviation assets for those assets. On the military side, we would provide aviation assets for special operations, for the SEALs and so forth. However, direct orders and direct functions were controlled by the National Security Council. We didn't fall under the TO&E, which is the equipment. We weren't tasked as members of the military. We were a separate entity altogether. Didn't exist in the military. As a matter of fact, during the Grenada invasion, there's a picture of me from a Louisville newspaper standing on a beach in Grenada with my Hughes 500 with about 70 bullet holes, entry holes into it. I'd sustained 2 broken ribs during the attack, and nothing you will ever find will show that type of aircraft as being one of the aircraft on that invasion. Yet there's a picture of me not being there on the front of the newspaper. The particular reporter, Jim Malone, who's been trying to trace this and get the Air Force or the Army to own up to it, the Army still contends that doesn't exist. That didn't happen. Yet he's the man who was standing there talking to me on the beach, at the beachhead in Grenada. Currently, I'll talk in current events on the 160th. Currently, they have Black Hawks and attack aircraft, 2 separate types of attack aircraft, and they have large cargo aircraft. The attack aircraft are the MD instead of Hughes. McDonnell Douglas bought out the Hughes Corporation. They're called the MD Defenders, which is a Hughes 500 beefed up. It's a utility model and it's an attack model, 2 separate models, each very dangerous in their own rights. The Black Hawks are utility aircraft, but they can carry armament and have long-range capabilities. And we have the Chinook aircraft, the Super Chinooks we call them, which are large troop and equipment carriers. All of them are very, very dark in color, and the matching paint identifies who they are. Very, very dark in color. However, a very, very blackish green would probably look black to the naked eye until you got right up next to it, and you would have to feel the tail of the aircraft to feel what name is on there as the United States Army. It is U.S. Army. However, in earlier years, the assets were controlled, like I said, by the National Security Council. Our particular unit in the Little Birds, many of us were officers from the Central Intelligence Agency or agents from the Central Intelligence Agency. Let me explain to you the difference. An agent is a contract person. An officer is a card-carrying person from the agency.
And you were?
I was an officer and an agent. On separate occasions, whatever the need was, I would be sheep-dipped out and into a different entity to work as a contract agent. As a matter of record, I was, yes. At our SEPA briefing, that wasn't, the government didn't contest that because they know it's a matter of record. Who I am and what I am now is a matter of public record. What I have to say may be highly contested and should be highly contested about those in power, because what I have to say about them is not a compliment.